So I'm originally from Amsterdam, where I led the Amsterdam History Museum, changed the name from Amsterdam History Museum to Amsterdam Museum, to make clear that, you know, it's not just an academic institution. History is our subject, but it's excluding a lot of people that are civilians in the city, and I would like to be more broad than just for the academics. So we changed it to the Amsterdam Museum. In Berlin, I've got a big difficulty that no name of no institution I led is the right name. The Stadtmuseum, which is the overall name for the organization, doesn't exist. That's a back office. And these are 4 of the 5 names, actually 6 names we are using. And nobody understands that the Märkisches Museum is the historical museum of the city of Berlin. It should be called Berlin Museum, but I'll get to maybe to talk about that name and the emotions that come with it, which might be the second subject I will try to, you know, intertwine with the idea of social networks through museums, and that is 30 years after. The big difference we still have in Berlin between people with a West German history and people with an East German history, and what it does to the organization, to the city, and to the inhabitants of the city. So, but this is the core house. I will show you some pictures. It is in a dead-end street or a corner of the center. You see the center of Berlin. The Ephraim Palais is our exposition hall, actually. Ephraim Palais is not saying Expo Hall, it's saying Ephraim, and nobody understands what Ephraim is. Knoblauch House is not a museum on Garrick. It's also not a Jewish name. It's somebody who was called Knoblauch, and it's a museum on period-style Biedermeier. And then there is a church, the oldest church of the city, which is also part of us. We've got deep southwest, down southwest, we've got a very good museum on the origins of the city, an open-air museum which is called Museumsdorf Düppel, which is an impossible name also. And then we will get something else. Let me see whether I can find the photos. This is the Märkisches Museum, and it must be about the first city history museum in the world. We have national history museums, for instance here, in Budapest, which is very, very old. But it's not a city museum. So this Land, Brandenburg, with Berlin as its capital, had one of the oldest, it's 1907, and you can see it's a sort of 3D experience through the ages, because you go through several types of buildings, from the Brandenburger Markt, that's the reason why it's Märkisches Museum, it's called Märkisches Museum, and you go through several styles, several sorts of buildings, a donjon, you know, castle tower, a kind of, what do you call that? Maybe that's a town hall, or there's also a cloister. So the architect, who was the city architect, tried to bring the history to the people, which was a very nice idea. And we will renovate this for a lot of money. We will build a bridge so that the dead corner will live again. We will make a creative quarter of the surroundings there, with a new building attached to it, or on the other side of the road, which is going to be City Lab. And in the City Lab, we want the Berliners to work with us. So we don't work, we don't speak, we don't tell, the Berliners tell. This is one of the concepts we are making. So this is this beautiful building from 1907. You can't find your way, so the first thing I was doing when I started 3 years ago in Berlin is making the logistics work. We've got great objects, we've got 4.5 million objects. I was director of a very proud collection in Amsterdam, 100,000 objects. Berlin has 4.5 million objects, so just to know about the huge amount of objects that we have to foster. This is that expo building, and in this building we have now an exposition on East Berlin. And I'm Dutch, and I am allowed to lead an exhibition on East Berlin. If I were a Berliner, either from East or West, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did. I let people talk about East Berlin. If I were an East Berliner, people would have said, that's nostalgie. It's the nostalgic approach of the Eastern history. If I were a Wessie, as they call the people from West Germany, they would have said, you can't tell that story because you didn't live the story. So what are you doing with our history? Now, because I'm Dutch, I'm neutral. And I can have people tell about East Berlin and their history without being accused of being from one side or the other. I just wanted you to know that we can talk about Europe, we can talk about the world, which I will do later, but Berlin in itself is a world discussion on several communities that have still to do with history, of partition, of a split community, and they haven't been able to break through those frustrations and traumas. They're still working with them. It seems as if they come back loudly. This is that Knoblauch house, beautiful. Didn't have a real function, so we're making a salon for the civics of the city again, the church. Beautiful church, nothing was happening. So this is now turning into what it used to be, a place where people come together and discuss higher matter. It can also be political, because this building was used as the first House of Parliament before the real House of Parliament of Berlin was built. I'm not talking about Berlin as the capital of Germany, but Berlin as a land, as a Bundesland. And that is that beautiful place in the south of Berlin, where you experience the beginnings of the city, of the village of Berlin, because they found all kinds of, it's an archaeological find, but it's only, so to say, what you see as coloring in the soil, and they started to reconstruct as experimental archaeology, and this is the participative museum of Berlin. The people that are involved do this, and they're scholars, they know everything about wool, and they're working experimentally on how it could have been, how did people exactly work with wool. And we have it on every subject of life in those times. And these people are participating already now for 30 years or so. There's a new generation, and everybody that is a visitor participates too. So here you learn about ecology, about how important it is that we have everything we have. So this is a very important place for me, and nobody believes that I find that interesting, because this is the big thing, the Humboldt Forum. And this is the moment where I change my subject. Let's go to that building. This is reconstructed in the city of Berlin in the center on the museum island. And it used to be an empty space, and then later the Palast der Republik. The building in which the DDR showcased their community in a partly parliamentarian building, partly entertainment building. The Palast der Republik, after the wall fell, was not used anymore. Asbestos was one of the reasons for it, and they broke it down. And then it was empty again for a while, and then somebody from the West said, we have to rebuild the old palace. The city needs its heart back. And with a majority of one vote, the Bundestag, the parliament, decided they were going to invest 660 million euros to rebuild this building. On three sides in the Baroque style. It has been demolished by the DDR after it was damaged in the Second World War. So the DDR didn't want to rebuild, to reconstruct the palace, because it's the wrong political period. It's the early capitalist society, it's the aristocratic society, so they were not interested in restoring this. They got rid of it, and mostly the aristocratic people from the West thought that was a shame, so it should come back. And then 660 million was reserved to rebuild this monstrous building, really. And it's there. If you go to Berlin, you can see it is ready on the outside. It's not ready so far that we can start with what I have to do in this building, because the soil is Berlin ground. That was given to the state, to the Bundesrepublik. to build on top of that soil this building, and as a compensation for the soil, Berlin got this range, which is a floor plan of 5,000 square meters as first a library, and then later an exhibition surface. And I came 3 years ago to Berlin, and it was in the state you saw in the earlier picture, when it was still concrete and there was no second layer, outside layer, so it looked like a huge plant, really. And I started to think about a concept with a group of curators I found outside my museum. In my museum, the 5 buildings you have seen, the people that work there since 30 years, half of them West Berliners, the other half of them East Berliners. They were fully overwhelmed already by the work they were doing for those 5 buildings. They couldn't also work for this. So I found myself a young team of museologists, and we started to talk, what can we do? What is effective for a message where you already have 5 city museums? So what are you going to do here? Very important is that we are just one of the partners in the building. Those 2 stories are all used by the Ethnological Museum and the Museum for Asian Art. This is going to be, in fact, a world museum. Now, what can you do as Berlin Museum in a world museum? You can talk about the connections between Berlin and the world. So, what we bring in this building is the international history of Berlin, just that. Now, it's very difficult to make a clear cut between local and global, because what is local in Berlin has a global aspect, and what is global in Berlin has a local aspect. So it is much more sort of, so to say, focusing than it is that you keep it apart. But what we're trying to say is that every so-called Berlin theme is not in itself a pure Berlin thing. These are the aspects everybody knows Berlin of. In combination, this can only be Berlin. Revolution, free space, borders, entertainment, war, fashion, and migration. Okay, Paris has also revolution, admittedly. But in combination with free space and war and entertainment, no. That's Berlin. This combination, this is the DNA component of Berlin. And there are many more aspects that we don't talk about because we don't have enough room. 5,000 square meters, 4,500 square meters should be enough for a big museum, but it's not what we want to make. We want to come with a message and want people to participate. So we show only 100 objects. 100 objects for 4,500 square meters. And more important is what these 100 objects, together with a lot of installations, multimedia, film and photography, etc. Every room is going to be a very lively room, where you will first have an awe effect, and later on the storylines comes to you, but you're also always interactively involved. So if you go around at the end, you get your network. In your visit, you build a profile. At the end, your profile is going to be combined with the profiles of other people. Now, you will of course think, oh boy, Big Brother, data. We destroy all data because we're not interested in the data of the visitors. We're interested in that they interconnect at the end. This is what I think comes from thinking in the way that you make people active instead of that you tell top down, let them listen, they go home, they forget all about it, and they don't do anything with what they've learned from the history of, in this case, the international history of Berlin. Now, how does it work? I just give you one room, this is just an artist's impression, forget it, but what you understand from it is that this is a totally different exhibition. Urban artists, and this is not the real design, but it's just a sort of look and feel. German artists in New York make this room, and this room tells like Diego Rivera's university wall in Mexico City with the history of the communism. It tells, in fact, the history of how the world was, you could say, discovered by the West, and then was possessed by the West, and then was divided by the West, and how today the big differences in the world still derives from that history, and how we have to interconnect, like von Humboldt, the name giver of this building. The two brothers von Humboldt were the famous scientists from the 19th century. One of them, Alexander, was a big discoverer of the world and has been making clear that everything is connected, that how in the thoughts of the Alexander von Humboldt, everything is related to each other, and that we together, because we're so much specialized, we have together think of solutions. And in fact, the same message, don't wait for the politicians, act together. Make communities active. This is a little bit more of the design of the walls, and then you understand there is a von Humboldt that we're trying to make clear that we need, so to say, to keep the world together as world citizens. European citizens too, of course. This is a ground plan of that room, and the most important thing to show you here is that you see here computers. You get an armband with a chip, and you choose here on one of those computers, you choose an avatar. We don't want to know your name, your age, your sex, whatever. We're not interested in you as a specific private person. We're interested in you as a possible player in a community. So you choose an avatar and you answer 2 or 3 questions on the world. And then you go into the exhibition, and with you, every time you're interactive somewhere, your tone you will hear. You'll get your own tone. So if you go through one of these 2 doors, every room has 2 doors, then you will hear your tone because you've chosen one of the doors. All these doors are dilemma doors. Above this door and that door stands, I'm rather local, I'm rather global. And you have to choose which door you take. Of course you want to go through the middle. It's not possible, you have to go global or local, rather. And then the next room, this is about the chip, and what it does. Let's skip that. You get a revolution, for instance. This is a room, the first room is, sorry, the second room is in fact the introduction. And you've got these huge pictures standing in the room. And they're the cliches of our aspects, of our themes. Revolution, so beautiful. The revolution of 1989, the Friedliche Revolution. And on the backside of those pictures, we question everything. Everything is questioned. Was it a beautiful revolution for everybody? No, the Turks were the big losers. And in the end, the Eastern Berliners were the big losers. By the way, Hitler called 1933 a revolution. So, question everything you see and hear about fashion. I mean, great fashion. Oh yeah, but how was fashion made in Berlin? By who? Against how much money? Around 1900. We don't have that in Berlin anymore. We're a sound community. No, under the same circumstances, clothing is made in India and Bangladesh and Africa for the same little money and in the same wrong conditions. The only thing that changed is that transportation became cheap. So we've nothing has changed actually. And that's because we're now a world. So we don't have our clothes made in Berlin. We have them made in Bangladesh and we don't pay for it. So this is a very critical exhibition on the internationality of a city, where we say every civilian, every civic has his responsibility to think and do it right. So it's a popular exhibition as you can see, against populism. There are no simple answers, but it's no problem because it's fun. We were talking about humor today. This is an exhibition that you will really enjoy. It's going to be fun. But the message is serious, and the questioning is interactive, and in the end, you're part of a community thinking of what can we do. That is the dream of this exhibition. It will open in a year, so let's see if it works. And if you want to react today, please give me some advice. We have settled all the, so to say, design, because it's a huge thing. It's millions of euros that is invested in it, and therefore you have to be early in the production. But the interactivity still is under production. So if you can say anything about the way we should do this, I'm glad to hear from you what you think about it. This is the room revolution. You can see a lot is happening. The most important element is that you turn the wheel of the history yourself. Not alone, because it doesn't work if you do it alone. Because revolution you don't do alone. You have to do together. So you have to find a few partners to turn the table, and then it will turn from 1848 to 1919, to 1918, 1919 to 1989, and between, of course, also mentioned today, 1953, 1968. Not so much, because we want people not to be exhausted by this exhibition. 100 objects is not too much. The installation should also be quick and dirty. The films must be short, because there is 2 stories upstairs with tens of thousands of objects from the world. What we try to do with these objects, so to say, with us is question everything you see. And the big question on objects in the say museums that do foreign cultures from other continents is, why are the objects here with us? I don't know a Rembrandt in Africa, but we have about all the masks from the African history in Europe and the United States, and a bit in China, Japan. So there is a strange circumstance that we own the cultural objects from far away continents, and these cultures are missing their objects, and we're talking now actually with these museums about, are we going to give back, or are we going at least to share? So what we're doing here in this exhibition is to twist the view and ask people about their history with the city. Now, I won't go tell too much about the other rooms. You have to come and enjoy it. This room exists of 4 inner rooms that move. It's about free space, and it's about the story that if you have a lot of free space and freedom in a city, everybody wants to be there, everybody comes, everybody has to live and to work, and you have to build. And you build your free space away, and suddenly there is no room anymore. So free space eats itself with success. Strange, contradictory things you have to talk about, like this is the beautiful situation of 1990. Everything was possible on the death stroke of the wall, and you can do nothing anymore. You can go into a film, into a cinema, or you can have a drink, because Potsdamer Platz has been fully built full, and so forth and so forth. We're talking about a lot of aspects. I'm not going to talk about it. I want to go to the end, but you can see a little bit how fun this exhibition is going to be. And every time again you go to 2 doors. We need another revolution. We can do without revolutions. But also a terminal which says, what would be the reason for the next revolution? What could be the next revolution? And here at entertainment, what do you do to entertain? This is a lot about not just the beauty of entertainment, but also questioning a lot of aspects, like the so-called Völkerschauen. There's a film on people that have still experienced how it was to be part of a world exhibition in Berlin, in which ethnology was a part in which people from Africa were participating as actors, so-called, to show primitive culture, which was, of course, very discriminating. And discrimination in show life goes on. Black people are always asked for the same roles, the black roles, with very often a certain flavor to it, which is not so positive. So Oh yes, let's talk about the Place de la République. The building they got rid of. We are really trying to tell a lot about this building, which might have been of the wrong, of a totalitarian system, yes, true, but do you break down every building from that period, and is that not the same as what the Romans did when an emperor was killed and the damnatio memoriae took place? The damning of the memory. Isn't this also part of history? Shouldn't we tell the story of the DDR, even if it is a warning about what this period has brought us? So we are going to open up. Yes, I'm ready. I'll go to the end because I want you to know what happens with your interactivity. There's a lot of room where we have people talk about their own history. So we step back and we have room which can easily be changed because it's a system in which we ask communities to tell their story, not we, they. It's a three, and then you come to the end and this room is going to be fun again. These are the profile machines. You put your tag, your chip, in a machine, and out comes a profile card. And it says something about your visit, and it's nice. We're not going to be unkind to people because they've answered politically wrong answers. No, we just want to connect people. So what we tell about the visit is how long it took and what you did, because we know. But all the information is absolutely, we don't want to use it, it's going to be demolished, but we want people to have on this profile card a hint about the other visitors that are there, and we can expect millions of visitors in this place, because it's the best place in the city, the best location, and it's a huge building everybody wants to see, and then they come to the exhibition. This is the first exhibition in the whole building they will approach, and then they can sit, and with the symbol they have on their profile card, they know where to sit. We've got 4 areas, and it is relaxing, so you don't have to talk if you don't want. You can also go away. It's just a message. If you want to come into contact with other visitors, and you want to have a subject, we give you one. And on top of that hint who could talk to each other because they found out they have a common interest, there is the possibility to participate. So with open science programs, with NGOs, we will give a possibility as a small community to participate in something that interests you. And you are from China, and you're from Germany, and you're from everywhere around, and we connect you without knowing who we exactly connect, because we didn't ask for where you're from, or how old are you, man or female, male or female, no, not. So by a coincidence, people will be able to talk to each other, they can relax, because they might be tired after an hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours of visit, but they also have the possibility to connect. Now, if they don't, I don't mind. It is the message. The message is, that easy is it, that if you have an opinion on something, you can come into contact with other people and talk about the subject, and we will give them the further possibility to connect. In this room, there will be hosts that help people, if they want to be active, what they could do with the subjects that interest them, with the outcome of their little discussion. Online maybe, or maybe in the bar outside, or maybe visit each other in another country, but at least do something with your visit. Again, you don't have to do it, it's just the message we want to bring over, because there are so many other possibilities in this world to connect and to do something about the problems that we cause ourselves. This is the room, this is the Verlianen, and this is the team.